Hello, everyone. It's good to be with you. My name is Ryan Lombardi. I'm the Vice President for Student and Campus Life. And today, we're another episode of Real Talk with Ryan. Really glad to be with you, as always. I'm joined by two of my superstar colleagues that I'll introduce to you here as we get started. I wanted to say I've appreciated you tuning into our previous episodes. I hope you find today's just as enjoyable. And we will be doing more of these as we go through the summer and as we get into the fall semester. So today, in honor of Pride Month, the month of June, which is almost over, sadly, but we're really excited to be joined by our colleagues who lead Cornell's LGBT Resource Center. First of all, Christopher Lujan, who's the Director, Associate Dean and Director of the Center, is with us. Christopher, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. So excited to be here. Happy Pride. My name is Christopher Lujan. I use the pronouns he, him, and his. And like Ryan said, I'm the Director of the LGBT Resource Center and also a victim advocate on campus as well.
Great. Thanks so much for being with us and all you do. Next, Crissi Dalfonzo, who's Assistant Director in the LGBT Resource Center. Crissi, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, so glad to be here. Thanks for inviting us today, Ryan. My name is Crissi Dalfonzo. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Assistant Director for the LGBT Resource Center.
Terrific. We'll learn a bit more today about the LGBT Resource Center as well as our colleagues and how students can get involved, how the center supports our community across campus and even into the Ithaca community a bit, and we'll get to learn a little bit more about that and all the resources. But first, I want to talk to my colleagues a little bit about your journey to Cornell and how you came into the work leading the center and anything else that you'd like to share. So maybe I'll start with Crissi. I'm going to mix it up. I was looking at Christopher.
Okay.
Crissi, tell us how you ended up here at Cornell and your passion for work in this area.
Thanks, Ryan. So it's actually a little bit of a winding story. I was not involved in queer work at all in undergrad. I was a resident assistant for 3 years and was really involved in my art program, but almost had nothing to do with the LGBTQ plus community. And so I went right into residential life when I graduated and kind of thought that I was going to have this res life track.
Many of us have started in that path, right?
I'm in good company, I am sure.
Yeah.
But I was very sure that I was going to be on this path. I was going to be, director of residential life somewhere and kind of just stay in that niche because I really enjoyed my time so much as an RA. But when I went back to grad school at the University of Maine, the Resource Center was hiring there.
Okay.
And I was like, you know what? I've never had a really strong connection to the community. I'm a bi-plus person. I really want to be more connected, more involved with my community. And so I took the assistantship and it just changed the whole trajectory. So I spent
Never
2
look back,
years,
huh?
Pretty much. I spent 2 years just doing every queer thing that I could possibly think of. And when I graduated, I was really, really looking for a resource center position. I was very targeted. And so when I interviewed at Cornell, I fell in love with the campus. I fell in love with the center. Christopher had just started and I was just really excited to be here on a campus and be involved in the queer work.
All right, Christopher, now it's your turn. Tell us about your journey.
Yeah. What I love so much about our team is we have such different paths to where we came to, where we came and what we're doing now.
So you're not going to give me a res life?
I'm not going to give you a res life. I've never worked in res life. But I started off going into my first undergrad experience at a university in California, and had a lot of challenges there. Had a lot of challenges that were kind of directly impacted by my identities, being LGBTQ plus one being one of them, and one of probably the most prominent one that kind of just brought infinite amount of challenges to my experience. Right. I actually failed out of my first college experience, kicked out of the campus, and had to kind of restructure myself and go to community college and really kind of find what I wanted to do in life. Originally, I was a musical theater major, which is shocking for some people sometimes because I could be a little bit of an introvert sometimes, but I love being on stage.
There is a difference. As a fellow musician, there's a difference between performing and being an introvert or extrovert, right?
Absolutely. So I realized musical theater isn't what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. Ended up going to another university, discovered that I loved just working with people individually. Wanted to be a counselor, thought I wanted to be a high school counselor or a middle school counselor. Then I worked with them and I was like, no, I'm good. Love me some college students. Love college students. I love where they're at in their life. Yeah. And I think what I really wanted to do was make sure that I create a space and support systems that help students who've experienced some of the challenges that I have. And what I really wanted to do was to be in these queer spaces and support these students, even though a lot of them have very different experiences that I had or Crissi have had. It's just such rewarding work. So I've done LGBTQ plus work for the past 12 years. I did it at nonprofit and now in higher education. And this is just where I belong. This is what feels great. This is my passion. So.
Awesome. Well, you two are doing amazing work. The center is thriving, and really appreciate all the energy and clearly the passion that you bring to your roles. I want to dig into something you said a little bit there, Christopher, and I think it's so important, and I think it's especially important at Cornell because our students, I think, struggle often when they come here with very high expectations of themselves. You know, a student who gets into Cornell has worked incredibly hard their entire life academically to get to this place. And I often experience interactions with students where they feel like the slightest misstep academically or the slightest question they might have as they think about themselves and developing themselves or maybe embracing their identity, and it sends them into this path of feeling like they don't belong or feeling like this isn't a place for them. Do you interact with students in that regard, and do you help students navigate these challenges that they might face as they come up to themselves here at Cornell, or maybe they experience failure that first time, like you just shared with us? Have you had that opportunity through the center to work with students in that regard?
Absolutely. I think this is a space that we want to build for students. We want them to have a relationship with us, to be able to share challenges and failures, also share joy and love as well. But we provide that space for students to come in and talk through those conversations, because it's inevitable. It's going to happen, and we want them to know that we're a space for them, to provide them a sounding board, an ear to listen. So it's something we do on a daily basis, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially what you said, the students who are in that questioning phase and coming into their identities, that is one of my favorite conversations to have, working with a student who comes into the center and they're not quite sure if they're an ally or if they're a community member, but they're looking to get involved, and meeting a student at that place and then working with them throughout the years and seeing them grow and blossom into their identity is just, that's one of the most rewarding parts of the work for me. I love seeing that progression and that identity exploration.
That's awesome.
And on top of that, individual work, we also create spaces where they're able to see themselves in others as well. So building community, being able to have shared experience and talk through how they work through those challenges is also something that's, every day for us. It's something that's a staple of our programming and our events in the Resource Center. So something that's always on our mind for sure.
I appreciate so much the authenticity you both bring to your roles, because I feel, again, students assume that everybody else has it figured out, right? And that the path was easy for them, and that whether that is, like you said, embracing their identity, or whether it's their academic path, or whether it's just the socialization to a place like Cornell, they look around and think everybody else has got this figured out, when very few of students have it figured out at any given point in our lives. And so knowing that they have a place they can come for that support is critical. So I really applaud you on that. Go ahead. Are you going to jump into something? Please do.
I was just going to say, I talk a lot with our students, and I'm very public about kind of my experience as a BI+ person doing queer work, because when I started working in resource centers, even when I started here, I was in a straight passing relationship with a heterosexual man, and really struggled with that feeling of am I queer enough? Do I belong in this community? And we have a lot of students who come in with very similar feelings, and I think it's really important for us to have those conversations, create those spaces, and for us to model our experiences. And that's okay for you to be 22 and questioning. You're still way ahead of a lot of other people, and this is what college is for.
Yeah. I think one of the most important things we can do in our work collectively is treat students as individuals and the humans that they are, and let their journey be their journey the way that they needed to have it unfold. And I think that often society tries to put people on paths or in buckets or trajectories or whatever, and to the extent at Cornell and the work that you do, the work that we do collectively in student and campus life, that we can support our students as individuals, I think and hope that contributes to their growth, their development, and their own confidence in who they are and their self, right? So I asked you some specific questions about relation to students' adjustment and transitions and all this type of stuff. But tell us a little bit more, tell our audience a little bit more about the work that you all do at the LGBT Resource Center. What are some of the signature programs? How do you all spend your days and your work? What are some of the top priorities that you have? And whoever wants to go first. Go for it.
So as the assistant director, I do a lot of our work with our student staff and a lot of our programming. So Christopher and I, over the last couple of years, have worked really hard with our student staff to build up some longitudinal signature programs. And so one of them, which is kind of my pet project, one of my favorites, is the Grow Shop discussion series, which is that chance for us to build these small communities. One of the things that Christopher and I kind of found when we got to Cornell is students are so high achieving that they've never really had the opportunity to pause and be vulnerable and talk about their identities with other people. And the thing that we discovered by doing a cohort-based dinner series, transitioned to discussion series over Zoom, we'll be returning to dinner at some point in the future, but the idea of being able to create this cohort series where we really intentionally structured is a very low barrier to entry of just what's your favorite color? Things that are really easy to start to get to know one another and build trust so that we can get to the place where we're starting to have conversations about discovering our LGBTQ plus identities and how we're handling microaggressions and internalized oppression. And it's just it's so beautiful over 6 weeks to see the community that we can form in just 6 weeks of discussion meetings. We also do programming around queer sexual wellness and consent, as well as programming for QD BIPOC students, so queer and trans, Black, Indigenous, people of color, as well as programming for trans empowerment. And am I forgetting something?
Wellness.
And wellness. So programming around mental health and wellness.
And are most of this programming you're talking about undergrad, grad, professional, all of the above, faculty, staff, community? Tell me what the general focus of the work is.
So almost all of our programming is focused on students, and most of the general programming that we hold is open to grads and undergrads. So the beautiful thing about Grow Shops, for instance, is we get a lot of graduate students as well as undergraduate students, and it's really fun to see the kind of natural pairings that start to emerge, and the undergraduate students getting to see some of our graduate students who are maybe a little bit further along in their LGBTQ plus identity exploration journey, to be talking to some of these first year students who are maybe newly out and really just starting that identity exploration process. Yeah. And so a lot of our programming is open to both, but then we also do hold some specific graduate and professional student programming. We know that it's really important. The community, Cornell is often so siloed that a lot of graduate students don't get to know folks outside of their programs. Right. And so we're really fortunate we have graduate students on staff who work with us to do that programming and build that networking, so that we're creating social spaces for queer grad students across all of the different disciplines to come together in a communal space and actually get to know each other outside of their academic programs.
Really glad you emphasized that. I get that question a lot about grad students and whether they're welcome into some of our spaces. And
we love
it's terrific to hear that you're focusing on that.
In addition to the amazing programs that we do in this space, we also do a lot of individual work. So Crissi and I make sure that we're open and available to meet with students on an individual basis when needed. Both Crissi and I are confidential resources, meaning we don't have this obligation to bring our information back to the Title IX office. It's purely confidential within our space, which is really kind of something that students gravitate to when wanting to have especially conversations around identity. So we do a lot of one-on-one work, and that could range from talking about our identity development all the way to I need help talking to a professor. Right, so right. We kind of brand ourselves as this hub of LGBTQ plus resources, and that could mean a various amount of things, whether it's providing folks referrals to spaces on campus or off. Yep. So we do a lot of that individual work, which is my favorite. I love doing that one-on-one work. We also do a lot of advising. So one of the great things about Cornell is the amount of student organizations we have on campus. Haven, the undergrad org, has about 8 to 10 student organizations at one time, ranging from things that support BIPOC students to ACE students. We also informally work a lot with our grad students as well. So there are about 4 graduate student organizations that are really active outside of on the Cornell campus, and we do a lot of co-programming. We do a lot of informal advising to them. So just also a great place to bounce ideas off folks, support them in programming.
So great information about the resources and the programs and the various offerings you have. Super glad we can have this conversation during Pride Month, where we're really trying to make sure that students are aware of those resources and how they can get support on campus. I know we don't have a ton of time left, so I'm going to ask you now to maybe offer a couple of top pieces of advice you might provide to students on this campus, either about accessing resources or about seeking support or anything along those lines. Do you have any focused advice for our students that they might benefit from hearing from you?
Yeah, just don't be afraid to connect with us. I think, and there's so many different ways to be connected with us, whether that's walking through the LGBT Resource Center at 626 Thurston on North Campus, whether that's...
you put the plug
yeah,
on
like
the location.
Third floor. So walking into our office, but we also know that could be a really difficult process for someone, especially if they're not out. So in the COVID world and working virtually, we've also opened up these opportunities for folks to connect via Zoom. So connecting with us, whether that's through email or by calling us. But we also have such an active social media. Social media is a great way to also start building communities with others, finding out what else is happening on campus. So our active social media that we have right now is Instagram.
I was going to ask what platform.
Cornell.LGBTRC.
On the Instagram platform.
On the Instagram page. We also have a Facebook, and a lot of our stuff filters over to that as well.
And if I'm a student that's not sure that I have the confidence to come in, like you said, anything like that, stop by your office. It is in 626 Thurston, which is an office, a unit that holds multiple offices too, right? So that can be a way to enter and not feel if they're feeling a little unconfident about doing that. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Within the 626 building, we have a support office for DACA and documented students, first-gen, low-income students, the Asian American Center, and then we also have our multicultural student leadership and empowerment team as well. And we work really closely with them. We try to do as many collaborative programs as we can. And then even outside of the 626 building, we have the Office of Spirituality and Meaning Making, the Women's Resource Center.
So we're getting a little bit on the short side of time, but these two individuals that I'm joined with today, my colleagues, Christopher Lujan and Crissi Dalfonzo, part of the LGBT Resource Center, leaders of the LGBT Resource Center. It's a key component of the Division of Student and Campus Life and the Office of the Dean of Students. So you also work in this broader spectrum of student life and all the things that we do on campus to try to support our students. So I'm going to give you the chance to ask me any questions you might have or anything that you think I should offer to the camera as we try to start wrapping up this episode.
Yeah, I think we had one question prepared. How do you celebrate Pride? How do you show your allyship to the LGBTQ plus community?
Well, thanks for asking. I appreciate it. And I try to do it in all kinds of ways. First of all, most importantly, I think, is at a very personal level, right? With friends, with colleagues, with family, to make sure they know how I feel in terms of supporting them and their identity and everything that they need to be their full selves. My own opinion about life and encountering people that I encounter at Cornell, or again, my friends and family, are I want to embrace and celebrate who they are, just as much as I want them to embrace and celebrate who I am and what I bring to our conversation. So I try to do that a whole lot on a personal level. On a more professional level, I really focus on trying to use my power and my platform and my voice to advocate for the populations that I want to support here on campus. And the LGBTQ plus Resource Center and the population is really an area that I want to advocate for and have continued to advocate for since I've been here. So trying to, when I'm in rooms or have the ability to think about resource allocation or think about policy change and can influence those things, I think that's one of the most important things I can do to show my allyship to the community, to make sure that our students have the support they need, have the resources they need, and can really be their whole selves so they can be successful here at Cornell. So that's a little bit about that and what I try to accomplish there.
We love that, and we see that just being here. We were just so excited to be a part of this conversation because it allows us to provide that visibility. It provides folks the opportunity to get to know us a little bit, which is always so important when students have to engage in some of the challenging conversations we have. So we appreciate that advocacy. We appreciate that your team also thought of us to be a part of this.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I appreciate you being here today for this episode, and I also appreciate everything you do for our students and the work you do every day. I know, like I said, your passion really exudes through, and that means so much. And the way that you see students as individuals and you embrace them and you bring them in, I think there's no important component to our work here at Cornell and student and campus life. So just you two really embody that, and I appreciate all that you do. So thank you all for tuning in to Real Talk with Ryan. Again, we'll do more episodes as we move throughout the summer. And I really wish you the best. I hope you're getting lots of rest and rejuvenation. You're enjoying summer. Maybe you're being productive if you have an internship or something. But we send our very best here from Ithaca, and we can't wait to see you back on campus this fall. Take care and have a great day. Bye.